The more I pray with God, the more childlike I become. This is why whenever I try to explain the heart of the Father to people, to Christians who I know, they all look at me as if I have three heads. Because they're coming to God with adult problems, with adult circumstances, everything through the physical, through everything that they're dealing with in this earth. When children come to their daddy, they don't think about the problems. They just love to be with daddy. They just love to be with the one that they love, the one that they are just attached to. When my child comes to me with stuff and he wants to show me, hey, Daddy, let me show you this, let me show you that. And a lot of times I'm like, okay, that's all right, that's nice. I'm focused on problems here in this world. I'm listening to what he has to say. He has a passion for something that is something that I'm not focused on. I'm looking at earthly problems. He's focusing on something that he has passion on. What we learn through God, through our experience with him in the Spirit, we become more passionate and ultimately become more of the child. We are becoming less earthly adult in the Spirit and more childlike in the Spirit the closer we get to our Father. And that's where I think a lot of the disjoint happens when we try to explain people how important the heart of the Father is to us. It's our growing physically is our growing in our knowledge, in our physical aspect, how we age and ultimately pass away in this world. How we grow in the Spirit is just walking in the knowledge of what we already have been given. And then when we operate in that joy, we become more childlike and more just wanting to be with the Father, not so much what he can give us, but for who he is. When a child is born here on this earth, a child is like so in love and passionate and dependent on his parents, his mother, his father. In the Spirit, it's the same way, but it comes from the other direction when we think earthly with our minds. When we think in our minds, this is why when it talks about, the Bible talks about renewing our minds, it talks about us understanding who we are through the Spirit, because we're trying to understand the Bible from the flesh in. We need to understand the Bible technically from the Spirit out. Because from the flesh in, we're never going to understand it. We're going to have more questions. We're going to have more confusion. Like I said before, it's like skiing uphill. You'll never do it under your own power. It's impossible. You can do a couple of steps. You think you can probably understand a fraction of it, but you're going to be gridlocked very, very quickly. The way we're going to know who we are and operate in that peace and that strength is through him. And there is our source. There's our basis. And it's through a childlike faith that just is the source of everything that we go by, to operate by. We try to use these circumstances here in this world so we can detect a strategy of which we can run by. We can never do it that way. Only through the simplicity of knowing who he is and operating as that child, as that infant, as that, seeing God as that source of love, are we ever going to fully know who he is and who we are. It's not for what we can get. It's not for what we can have. It's not for what we can achieve. It's not for what place we can get to. It's operating from the one who we already are with, where we operate in that fullness and that strength, and that assurance and that peace and that love and that childlike faith and dependency. There is where everything begins. There is your starting point.